Congress is a contentious place right now. It's an understatement, right? A lot of Republicans and Democrats are laying low from the media during the impeachment, but Congressman Van Taylor, he's kept his date with us. The Republican from Collin County is in studio this morning, and joining the questioning as always is Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in.
Great to be with you guys.
Always appreciate that.
Sure.
Not all your colleagues want to talk right now, so we appreciate you
Absolutely
coming in. So the House is going to take the impeachment vote this coming week here too. Based on testimony you heard in the two committee hearings, do you think the president abused his power?
Well, I think let's first begin with impeachment's incredibly serious, right? That is probably the most serious vote a member of the Congress can take, other than declaring war, right? So, and so I think it needs to be taken under very serious circumstances. Speaker Pelosi has said it needs to be bold. I mean, it needs to be clear, it needs to be egregious, and it needs to be bipartisan in agreement. And unfortunately, I don't think we have not met any of those. I have not seen any conduct by the president that rises to the level of something that is impeachable, which means removing him from office, particularly knowing that we've got an election less than a year away.
Do you think he abused his power, though, at all in office, Congressman?
I think that presidents make decisions that Congress disagrees with. I think that that's happened from the very first president, from George Washington to this president. I think there are 45 presidents that were members of Congress that stand up and say, I don't agree with what you've done. But there's a political process to deal with that. And impeachment is not the political process to deal with that, with the policy disagreement that the president has made.
I mean, and we should say, how will you vote and why? I understand you don't like the process, but how will you actually vote?
Sure. Again, I have seen nothing that rises to the level of an impeachable offense, and this has been a process that has been very disappointing. I mean, you don't have to watch too many episodes of Law and Order to know that an attorney will be appointed to you if you can't afford one, and the president was not allowed to bring witnesses to the Intelligence Committee hearings. He was not allowed to have counsel. He was not allowed to introduce exculpatory evidence. And I'll just share one fact that has been sort of lost in all the cable news media out there. When the Rules Committee was voting on the rules of impeachment, a Republican member offered an amendment to the rule saying, look, if there's any exculpatory information that the Intelligence Committee finds, that the Intelligence Committee must hand that over to the Judiciary Committee. And unfortunately, the Democrats, every single one of them, voted against handing exculpatory information over to the Judiciary Committee.
We hear a lot of discussion about a few Democrats who are concerned about appealing to independent voters and how independent voters feel about this. What are you hearing from independent voters in your district?
Well, I hear a lot. I hear a lot on both sides of this issue. But at the end of the day, I'm guided by the facts. And I look at what the president did. I've spent a lot of time reading the transcripts, a lot of time talking to colleagues on the floor. And I'll share another tidbit from the floor, talking to a colleague who sits on the Judiciary Committee as a Democrat, and I said, what standard of proof are you reaching for here? Is this beyond a reasonable doubt? Is this a criminal standard of proof, or is this preponderance of the evidence? Is this a civil standard of proof? And the member actually looked at me and said, I really don't know, Van. I need to go check. And that just tells you how rushed this process is, how flawed this process is, and really how unfortunate it is, because we're not working on important things that we need to be working on. We have wasted months and months of time and really torn our country apart. We have really polarized our country with this impeachment process instead of working on the important things we need to work on, like lowering the cost of health care, securing our border. We've had a real crisis on the border that Congress has not been helpful to the president on, and working on foreign policy.
Well, let's talk about some other things that are going on. It sounds like work is getting done. With the 2020 election approaching, you just introduced some bipartisan legislation, the Cybersecurity Defenses Act. And that's important here because we saw this summer 50 Texas cities, 50 Texas governments get hacked, taken offline.
Absolutely.
So what does this legislation do, and how important is it right now with the election approaching?
Sure. It's very important to secure digital assets, right? And so you've got a lot of information, consumer information. If you buy water from the city of Plano, your address and your credit card number are on store with the city of Plano. If you've got a child in the Frisco School District, your personal information is at the Frisco School District. So you want to make sure that they are secure from cyber attack. And so I'm working on a bipartisan basis. I filed legislation to try to get, we have a very excellent agency at the Department of Homeland Security. I sit on the Homeland Security Committee there in the U.S. House to try to get that group, CISA, to do a better job of helping local governments secure their networks against attack.
They weren't talking to each other.
Well, they're not talking to each other enough. They need to talk to each other more and share more of what kind of attacks are going on out there, what kind of defense defenses that they can use, techniques, and a lot of that needs to be very rapid, needs to be very real time. So we're trying to get a better system, better mechanism for communication between the federal government and local governments.
What do you read into the British election last week?
Well, that's a different electorate, but I think the broad thing, I would say, that what I take from what the Britons have voted for are twofold. One, sovereignty. They want to be their own country. They don't want to be underneath within the European Union. And the second thing is it's a turn away from socialism. And that is a choice that we're about to make here in November. We're going to make a choice as a country. Do we want to continue with the free market system that has lifted up more people out of poverty than any other system in the world? Or do we want to go down a socialist road and say you don't get to own what you make? It
the
belongs
polls
to the
show more than half of voters under 30 support Bernie Sanders. Is socialism really a message that echoes or against opposition?
So, look, socialism is something that's in the halls of Congress today. I have colleagues who I serve with every day who believe strongly that government should own what you make. I don't believe that. I believe in private property. I believe in the free enterprise system. I think that we have been incredibly successful with the free enterprise system. And I'll just point out, Texas in the first 2 quarters this year had a 7.5% increase in income annualized. And so we've had great success here in Texas with the free market system. I think we need to keep fighting for that. And that's a choice we're going to make in November.
Congressman, good to see you again. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me in.